so that I get to learn on the next level what this whole energy system called life is about, and in particular, how to take us to the next level of what's required in this energy system to remove, to work through whatever energetic dynamics we hold that keep us out of our true nature as love. You know, the bottom line is recognizing who we are and coming back to full relationship with that aspect of our own being. It's like, you know, if you remember the song, "What's It All About, Alfie?" Well, this is what it's all about. And that's where we want to go, is into what does it take? What do I need to rid myself of? Or what do I need to open to the truth of who I am? And it's opening to the truth of who we are that creates healing. It's not any of the belief systems that come from the perceptual mind. So that's where we want to head. And Miss Jeannie, before we step into the next piece of the puzzle, let's check and see if anybody's in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room.
Chat room's quiet, and no hands up in the switchboard. If you want to ask a question, press 1. That puts a hand up and lets me know you want to talk and that you're not just listening. So, no hands up.
Okay, well, if all is quiet, then let's continue what we started actually on Friday. So if you want to get the first piece of what I'm going to cover here, you can go back to Friday's archives. And to get to Friday's archives, you go to our website, whyagain.org. When you get to the home page, you'll see a microphone on the page. If you click the microphone, scroll down, and if you just follow the links, it'll take you down to where the archives are. You go to 2024, you go to July, you go to July 4th, or whatever Friday was. Yesterday, I felt was really an awesome conversation with Miss Susan. That was fabulous, Susan. I feel like we opened a big space, so thank you for that. And so if you want to pick up what happened Friday, go to the archives and grab that. And that would be the first half. And, well, I don't know. It may be the first third, the first quarter. I don't know what's going to happen from here, but let's move forward to recognizing, you know, we live in a culture that tells us a lie very early in life. And we live in a culture that specializes in knocking the truth out of us. You know, if you hold a newborn child, anyone who's had a child, go back to the moment where you first held that newborn and tap into that child's energy. And Jeannie and I, having asked that question of tens of thousands of people all over the globe in all kinds of different cultures, everybody's descriptor is always exactly the same. Not necessarily the same word or words, but always the answer is some variation on the theme of love. Tap into and put a word to the essence of the newborn. And what you find is love. You and I are that. And we live in a culture that specializes in knocking the awareness of that out of us. It's the restoration of that awareness that is needed for true healing. We can manipulate symptoms and do all sorts of things, but if there's going to be true healing, you have to get back to that. And one of the things that makes it tricky is that the culture has then, once they knock the awareness of who we are as love out of our awareness, then they told us a lie. You know, Vladimir Lenin is probably the person who's responsible for more deaths on planet Earth than any human being in history. We might even say non-human in history. Because without the active presence of love, you don't really have a human life. You have a human form, but you don't have a human life yet. And what he said, what Lenin said was, if you change the meaning of a culture's words, you can destroy that culture. So now the word love represents a state of being, our original true nature. And after having knocked that out of us, what does the culture do? About the age of 14, 15, 16, 17, it sends us out the door and says, now, go find somebody to love you. Go find somebody to love. You know, popular theme song, what was it? Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? You'd better find somebody to love. This is all a brainwash. You don't need somebody to love. You don't need to be loved by anybody because that's all a fraud. You can't. It's not possible. It's a lie. You are love. You can't and you don't do love. You don't be loved. It's all a fraud. And what happens when you send the mind on a fraudulent journey is things get nuts. Things get crazy. Because goal after goal is created in order to find that somebody to love or somebody to love us. And of course that goal is going to be frustrated because it's not possible. Love is not a verb. It's not something we do to each other. Now we got a whole cultural history that says, I love you, and it's all a lie. The moment where you held the newborn. Love, right? Now check it out. Is the newborn loving you, or is the newborn love? It's really clear that the newborn is love. It is a noun. It is a state of being that until you rediscover it about yourself, you will be in a diseased state. When you rediscover it about yourself, and then you acquire the tools with which to uncover the brainwash, the trauma, the drama, the energetic patterns that never belonged in your human form, then by holding to the active presence of love, you begin the dissolution of the generational patterns and the generational insanity. So it's important to understand that love is a noun. It's a state of being. Now, the habit mind wants to say, oh, no, I love you. No, I want them to love me. And, get over it. It's not an accurate definition for the word. It's not what the word means. But if you insist on sticking to it, then you insist on keeping your mind on a false journey. The false journey has to be given up. So it's important to understand that love is a noun. It's a state of being that I can maintain. If I know that that's what it is, I can maintain it with practice, no matter what somebody else does. And unless degrading content overrides my true nature, the love that I am, then I'll maintain that state of being. I will maintain my human life. And that, I would offer, is the resolution of every trauma in history. Now, if I mistakenly believe that love is a verb, as our culture's misleads into thinking, I attempt to achieve the impossible. I attempt to love you or get you to love me. Hold a newborn. Anytime you forget and you want to do this verbing somebody, it's interesting. I've a few people over the years have turned my name into a verb. Somebody will be in their stuff and they'll say, and they'll contact me and say, well, I was informing them about your work and I Michael Riced them. They turned me into a verb. But you can't turn love into a verb. It's what you are. So one of the core misunderstandings of the writings from the world's most famous text on living as love, a text on physics, physiology, psychology, cognitive science, and genetics, comes from a book that almost no one knows is a textbook on those topics. They've been fooled into thinking it's a religious text. It's called the Bible. Greek translations of the opening words in the New Testament book of John, we're told by the Greek says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. And that's a total misrepresentation of the actual Aramaic words that were written there. In the original Aramaic, the words say, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. You, as love, have the ability to, if you wake up to who you are, to originate mind energy and therefore create an original life. If nobody informs you of that, then what happens is you create a replicate life where the mind just repeats the patterns. I wrote the book on that one. Why is this happening to me again? I feel very blessed. The universe reserved that title for me. But the Greeks totally misrepresented those original Aramaic words and correctly understood these words inform us of the power that we have over our lives, our bodies, literally over our chemistry through the conscious use of our minds. Because chemistry is nothing but a state of mind. Now, if we go back and we listen to Einstein, we need to apply Einstein's thinking here to understand this, or at least that's one of the physicists we can bring that forward from. And here's what Einstein says. On such things as matter, we've been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Now, maybe you know better than Einstein. Maybe you have a better mind, know more about the world than Einstein did, but he says, and I'm going with Einstein, matter does not exist. Well, Michael, I look in the mirror or I look down at my hand and I see matter. Are you sure of that? Or is that a fabrication of your mind? What they're showing in the cell biologist laboratories, when you think a thought, that thought produces a neuropeptide. That neuropeptide, a molecule, appears in your structure, circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches, and it lands on the receptor site. If we were to observe the landing of that neuropeptide on the receptor site from inside the cell, we would see what we call chemistry coming into the cell. Mind energy becomes flesh. Literally, this is what the cell biologist is telling us with those opening words in the book of John. Again, correctly understood, these words tell us about the power we have when we consciously use our minds. And if we have unconsciously used our minds to create all sorts of aberrant chemistry, then the key technology tool for removing the aberrant chemistry is forgiveness. And again, the Greeks misinterpreted that one, and they told us, well, you know, there's somebody out there that's the problem in your life, and they did it too, and it's all their fault, but it's okay. Be big about it and forgive them. I will say to you, never forgive anybody for anything. Pardon somebody, if you will. Let somebody off the hook, if you will. But forgiveness is a term, a word that has been misrepresented by the Greeks, misrepresented as appearing in the scriptures to be something about letting somebody else off the hook. That's all a lie. It's all another fraud. If you have aberrant chemistry in your structure, you have aberrant mind energy in your structure. You forgive the mind energy in your structure, you recapture the neuropeptide from your cell, you pull the chemistry out of the cell, and you delete it. Movement of the breath dissolves that chemistry from the cell. And now all of a sudden, the person who they say has the imbalanced mind chemistry in their brain, the imbalanced chemistry disappears. It's called forgiveness. Without forgiveness, it doesn't disappear, and that's why everybody's trying to drug anybody with what appears to be a chemical imbalance, trying to drug them to death. Let's listen to an English physicist. This gentleman is actually an astronomer, a mathematician, and physicist, Sir James Jeans, and here's what he says. Today, there is a wide measure of agreement on which the physical side of science approaches almost total unanimity, that the stream of knowledge is heading toward non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought, that is an organized state of mind energy turned into a great organic structure, rather than like a great machine. Mind no longer appears as an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We're beginning to suspect that we ought rather to hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. This is a guy coming out of the laboratory as a physicist. Interesting, the agreement between Sir James Jeans and one of the world's preeminent physicists and teachings of an apparently lowly carpenter 2,000 years ago. Yeah. Yeshua 2,000 years ago, before any of these guys, before Einstein, before James Jean, before, Carl Jung. There's a man who told us mind energy becomes flesh, and if you don't like what's showing up in your physiology, then you remove from your heart, which in the Aramaic language, in our modern language, would be your unconscious. You find the technology and you remove from your heart that which you projected into your brain's image of your brother. That's 2,000-year-old technology. That's 2,000-year-old understanding, and the Greeks turned it ass backward. Nikola Tesla, creator of much of our modern technology, including alternating current. The reason why you have electricity in your house? Nikola Tesla. So today, science begins to study non-physical phenomena. It will make more progress in 1 decade than it has in all the centuries of its existence. Bringing this understanding into the realm of healing and disease requires a surrender of many false ideas we've been taught to accept, especially the false ideas we've been taught about forgiveness. True healing is not about belief, but about the individual thoughts that make up the thing we call belief, and the forgiveness of those thought disorders, the removal of the energetic patterns, because if you have a thought disorder, mind energy, it literally becomes the chemistry in your cell. It becomes your flesh. And it's got to be exited from your flesh in order for healing to happen. And you can't manipulate that to happen by stuffing the body with drugs. That doesn't mean that there isn't a place for the drug. Drugs can be extremely useful. They can save a life if they're properly used. Improperly used, they're a tragedy. Applying forgiveness to thought disorders removes the mind energy that produces the aberrant chemistry in the cell. So thought, it's been proven, is back of and superior to the world of matter. And thought is the matter. Changing thoughts changes the structure of the matter that makes up your form. Your so-called body is a dynamic energy system, literally a cosmic soup of neuropeptides, which lab research now shows are reflections of condensed thoughts. Interesting book out there by a lovely lady, someone who left her body much, much too early, Candace Pert. She was the chief of brain biochemistry in the clinical neuroscience branch of the National Mental Institute of Health. And she wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. Fabulous book. Get a hold of Molecules of Emotion and you'll understand on a different level. Candace loved the Aramaic forgiveness process. And unfortunately, she left her body way ahead of time. So if someone suffers from a thought disorder, mind energy that is error, one of the primary sources of thought disorders are the power person messages we get. And the first power person message that most everyone gets that ultimately needs to be forgiven, needs to be removed from physiology, the first thought disorder is usually something along the lines of, you're broken, you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough, you'll never make it. And when one holds those as their basic belief system, their BS, then they will live in accord with those thought disorders. So if one suffers from thought disorders, holding disintegrative mind energy in their form, that energy, wherever it's stored, will create disease conditions within the cell, and therefore the source of all suffering. Deepak Chopra is a medical doctor. Powerful phrase says, to think is to practice brain chemistry. In Aramaic, forgiveness is a tool for changing the brain chemistry of the past, for freeing ourselves from generations of embedded disintegrative mind energy. It's about removal. Forgiveness is not about letting other people off the hook for the pain induced by aberrant chemistry within our own structures, within our own cells, and therefore moving within us. When used properly, forgiveness changes cellular chemistry, and diseases disappear in an instant. And then, when in turn one engages in mind energy that is of an integrative nature, thoughts based in love, in truth, compassion, and caring, the tissue in which that integrative energy is stored is strengthened. Physiology and the brain strengthen. Fear and hostility are defenses. Fear, hostility, and defensiveness are disintegrative energies relative to our cellular structure. Oh yeah, fear. Well, that helps me. That makes sure that I'm scared and I keep from putting my hand on the hot stove. Excuse me. Once I understand that the stove is hot, I need no fear to keep my hand off the stove. All I need to know is if I put my hand on the stove, I burn. Thank you. I don't need fear. We do need to be properly taught about the world, but if we have fear instilled in us, about something, Job gave us a really powerful and important piece of the puzzle thousands of years ago when he said, that which I feared most has come upon me. That which I dreaded has happened to me. What was he doing? A la Deepak Chopra, practicing brain chemistry and bringing about results in his world. So again, fear, hostility, and defensiveness are disintegrative energies. They may seem to protect, but in the long haul, they're promises of fraud, and they always lead to pain and failure. If you don't take responsibility and take back control of your mind, then if there are fear-based energies within your generational system, then you'll be inextricably bound to react in the same way and repeat the same suffering as others within your system. Mahatma Gandhi had a powerful thought that he used when he was tempted to get lost in some form of fear. And what he said was, when I despair, I remember that all through history, the ways of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fall. Think of it, always. Thank you, Mahatma Gandhi, for what you gave to the world. And if you haven't watched the film Mahatma Gandhi, is, I believe it's Mahatma the Man. Awesome film, powerful space of healing. So once again, think a thought, and a neuropeptide appears in your so-called body. These neuropeptides are proteins, each a unique structure, a reflection of and built according to the blueprint created by the thought that formed it. Each neuropeptide is designed to inform, to carry the message it contains into the cell and directs the cell's function accordingly. Each neuropeptide, when it lands on a cell, is replicated in the cell as so-called chemistry. And this is the mechanism by which individual cells, which have no other apparent means of contact with the outside world, are informed, accurately or inaccurately, about the world that surrounds it. Errant mind energy, thoughts, becomes and sustains disease, quote-unquote, chemistry, as long as it's present in the system. Now, most have been taught to believe that the constructs of their mind called perception are facts, that they're an observation of external events, when in truth, Every perception is nothing but a construct of one's own mind, based in the mind energy held in that mind, accurate or inaccurate, and our perceptions are constructed out of thoughts. So in the same way that our cellular chemistry is constructed out of thoughts, our perception is constructed out of thoughts. So our perceptual constructs will tend to be accurate about the so-called chemical results in our physiology. But you've got to remember that it's the mind energy that is back of and superior to it all, and to constantly be on guard and be cleaning up the mind energy based in anything that even resembles any form of hostility or fear in order to get free of it. Perception is nothing more than a construct reflecting the quality of our thoughts. Perception has a quality. Those whose mental constructs, we say, are smart. Those with poor perceptual acuity, not so bright. Accurate thoughts about self, others in the world, lead to accurate perceptions. Poor quality, inaccurate thoughts destroy perception and intelligence. So if you were fed thought disorders by your power person, and again, they're generally based in things like you're broken, there's something wrong with you. People spend their whole lives, I'm broken, what's wrong with me? Why can't I? Why don't I? And they construct perceptions about themselves that, made of that aberrant mind energy, have them believing those things about themselves. And they're the very things that need to be forgiven. Quality and accurate thoughts destroy perception and intelligence. So the whole body of work that we're talking about here is about reconstructing your mind. Paul said it thousands of years ago. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, if you refuse to renew your mind, and you go looking out there for something to fix it or somebody to fix it for you, then you lose the opportunity to build the skills required in order to bring correction to your own life. So when a thought, when a piece of mind energy, a neuropeptide, is recruited into activity by so-called thinking, or resonated into activity by events in the world, each stored neuropeptide becomes part of the individual's constructed perception. That's why I look at an event and I see one thing. My perceptual mind shows me something, and your mind shows you something else, and the next person shows them something else. Each of us is looking literally at the content of our own minds, yes, resonated by the events, and we say, well, you know, there was an accident and 6 people watched and went into the courtroom and testified about the accident. It's hard to tell that any two were at the same accident. Their descriptions are so different. Why? Because that occurrence resonated mind energy in each individual who observed it, and each individual's mind constructed a reality perception. So when in either fear or hostility, which is an indicator that there's aberrant mind energy moving, our perception, that is our personal reality, has little or nothing to do with what's actually happening in the world. What most people do, there is an actuality in the world, and most people substitute for that actuality a construct from their own past, from their own data store of aberrant realities that have little or nothing to do with the actual happening that has occurred in the actuality. There's we have a copy of a book you can download free from our website. A multi-million-dollar research project was done by the CIA on human intelligence. And here's what the CIA concluded. There's a chapter specifically on perception. And here's a quote from the CIA's research, years of research now. They're researching perception so that they can get their analysts to have the most accurate perception possible. But here's what the CIA put in writing. Perception is demonstrably an active rather than a passive process. It constructs rather than records reality. People, quote, people construct their own version of reality. You can go to our website and find that quote and download it there. If you want to see another perspective, another assembly or documentation of this information, go to YouTube, put a search in for a TED Talk by a gentleman named Anil Seth, A-N-I-L-S-E-T-H. Powerful. And basically what Anil Seth does, it shows us how the mind constructs the world we see, the pictures in our minds that we think are brought in by our eyes, but are really nothing other than constructs of our brain. And the constructs of our brain do nothing but reflect the content of our minds. So literally, the world you see is a reflection of the thoughts that are moving in you. If thought disorders are moving in you, then your perception is going to be off base. Albert Einstein offers input on the purpose of becoming fully expressed as humans. Powerful statement here. And here's what Einstein said. A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion, Einstein says, is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creature and the whole of nature and its beauty. We need to be trained into a language based in truth in order to be able to fully do the work of healing. Each neuropeptide is a quote-unquote physical reflection of a thought we've engaged in. Each thought communicates and inserts an energy, a message, into our cells. The messages received deeply impacts every activity of the cell, including changing the action, right down to the rewriting of our genes, which is called epigenetics. And all of this is held in place by the mind. One of the objectives of this new quantum still point intensive that I'm doing with people is to get them to, at least for a moment, let go of their minds. And if they're in a physiological state where they've learned to let go of resistance, then physiology turns into a superconductor state, and there are monumental amounts of work done in minutes. Now, my offering would be that the mechanism of cellular communication was originally designed to inform the cell about the actual world. But then a relatively new skill called perception, made up by us, interrupts that process by inserting in its place an artificial construct, a made-up world that is a projection of unresolved past experiences held in the cellular or body memory. And it's constructed using those past thoughts from memories. The false, now inserted, instead of awareness based in truth and love being the root of perception, that construct is massaged into appearing as the present. An internal, strictly internal construct, an external picture. And this process is what happens inside of most people when their minds trick them into believing their realities are true about the world when they're only true about their own minds. Formed from content acquired in the past, these perceptual constructs or realities appear to be current, present moment experiences. But remember the why is this happening to me again? Remember, if you've been through a particular construct 87 different times with 42 different people, why does that happen? Because the construct of reality comes from your own thought system. And aberrant thoughts produce aberrant constructs of mind. And until the root constructs are changed or forgiven, then one gets to live the why is this happening to me again experience. Although they oftentimes turn it into the why are they doing this to me again experience. This work is about training the mind so it can discern the difference. On its own, the mind can't distinguish whether it's reliving an hallucinated reality or an accurate perceptual construct. One of the markers that one is stuck in an hallucination is that fear and or hostility are the prominent features that underlie the mind's constructs. They indicate that current perception is being formed from the past and therefore is not the truth. Hostility and fear tell you that what your mind is showing you is an aberrant construct from the past. It's not true about the present. A thought from the past manipulated into a pretense of a live present moment is a lie. It's just an appearance. You remember the man Yeshua 2,000 years ago said, don't judge by appearances. When these constructs or hallucinations get between us and our loved ones and our lives, the results can be devastating. It always amazes me that people learn this but still believe that their minds, controlled by fear and hostility, are telling them the truth. Now, unlike errant external Greek forgiveness, where we're told to let others off the hook for our internally replayed experiences of sadness, rage, guilt, fear, trauma, we must learn to actually forgive, actually remove the thought disorders at the root of our pain-based perceptions. That's what we're working to do with this work. That's the whole purpose of it. We ultimately, you must, if you want to live a true human life, you must learn to remove your habitual thought disorders. And the person you think causes your pain only surfaces realities that are already within you. With the tools, every painful experience is transformed into an opportunity for monumental healing. Literally, the chance to forgive or undo, dismantle generations of inherited, repeated traumas. Now, if you want to take another look at that, if you want to sum that all up, get a copy of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Unfortunately, I can't sell you one because they're out of print, but back 30 years ago when I first wrote the book, we sold enough copies that just about any day you can go to Amazon or eBay and find used copies available, and they're usually pretty cheap. Or if you don't, if you want a physical book, that's the way to get it. Otherwise, just go to our website, whyagain.org, and when you get to the home page, whyagain.org, you'll see a picture. You'll see the cover of the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Click on that cover, drill down, and you'll be able to download free in at least 9 different languages a copy of the book. Now, my offering is that life abhors us holding on to our disease energies. And I'm going to just put a hold on that thought because we're about almost 45 minutes into the hour. And I'm wondering if maybe we've resonated a few questions for people, covered a lot of territory in 45 minutes. So if you're out there in listener land and you happen to be on one of those stations where we can't see you, our call-in number is 563 888-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show. And then if you push 1, that'll raise a hand in the control panel. Jeannie will know that you want to talk to us. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up? Or anybody in the chat room with a thought for us?
No, Joe had his hand up, but I'm assuming that his job or something, he had to go. He's not on the switchboard any longer. But I would just like to add, I do a 365-day gratitude thing on my phone. And the one that came up today says, we all have a voice inside our head. We all know that this self-judging, bullying voice within our minds, when we learn to tame it, it can be very useful. But if we allow it to free rein, it behaves like a dictator. And just like a real dictator, the voice can tell us many positive things. It can boost our confidence by saying, nicely done. And it can tell us that we are intelligent and hardworking. It can just as easily turn against us, however, telling us that we are bad or weak or stupid. It can tell us we are hopeless or that life is not worth living. What is so potentially dangerous about the power of the inner voice is that we lose contact with the fact that we are even listening to the voice. The dictation is so constant and seamless that we disappear into the voice. We identify with it or fuse with it. Thanking your mind is a technique that can help you create a better relationship with your mind, especially when it starts becoming negative. When your mind starts to chatter, listen to your thoughts and then answer back saying something like, thank you for your thought. Really, thank you. If you speak to your mind dismissively, it will continue right on problem solving. Be sincere. You might want to add, I really get that you're trying to be of use, so thank you for that, but I've got this covered. If you're alone, you might even want to say it out loud. And then it goes on down. But anyway, it's exactly like what you're just talking about.
Go ahead, complete reading it to us, sweetie. I think they're doing it's coming from another perspective that I think just augments and helps people's little brain cells for exactly what we're working to communicate. So I'd love to hear the rest of what they have to say.
It just has a little more, and it says, cultivating a compassionate relationship with the dictator in your head will improve your daily life. What is your mind saying to you right now? Write down your compassionate response below and thank your mind for its suggestions, and then let it go.
Cool.
And we do have a hand up.
Great, let's go for it.
All righty. It is 864, and you are on the air.
Hello.
Welcome, 864. Give us the name. Where are you calling from?
See, my name. What is my name? I go by many names.
Sounds like a guy outstanding in his field.
I go by many names. And yes, outstanding in my field is one of them. That's me, Joe Bryson. Yeah. Hey, let's have a round of applause. Yes, thank you.
Hey, Joe.
It is. It's a privilege to be on the show. It really is. I'm honored, as usual.
Well, delighted that you're here. What's on your mind, sir? Appreciate you.
What's on my mind is breathing, and the idea that I'm suspecting that I may have employed my breath as a function of my ego. So what I'm experiencing is this notion that it is a tool of love. It is a tool of functioning, and whenever I feel the drift to stop and hold my breath, that is a function of non-love, and to actively breathe, and whether I'm one-on-one with someone or I'm swimming in the pool, to breathe the breath as I stroke, as I swim, to take a full breath. And I mean, it's one of those things where, for me anyhow, the reality of it is, what's with the deep breathing, Joe? What's going on? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm great. but I really like to breathe deeply because it activates or reactivates wherever you are. I am on the ladder is this reactivation and the welcoming of the breath and the friendship, as opposed to really this. I had cultivated and the notion of, okay, I'm going to do something. I got to hold my breath and then I'll do it. Hold your breath and jump, or hold your, you're standing in. I'm going to, here I got to go take this test and hold my breath and here I go. Instead of the cultivation of, okay, breathe into this. It's almost like, before you go on stage or whatever, before I come on the Mind Shifters radio is, wait a minute, just breathe. It's one of the things that, for my relationship with you, Michael, as well as Jeannie, is that we all three of us will say that to each other. Hey, nice breath. And you're like, yeah,
exactly.
Wasn't it? That was a nice breath. Thank you. I think I'll have another. So
yeah.
Just that aspect, just the aspect of when I'm intimate with someone, or in other words, one-on-one with someone, it's okay. It's okay to take that deep breath, because it is that, I guess, there's a bit of self-consciousness to it, whereas the breath dissipates that self-consciousness and just welcomes whatever loving energy is between or coming from or coming to me. That's all I had.
That's pretty awesome, Joe. Well, that's pretty awesome. Actually, I'm wondering if you've copyrighted that one idea that you came up with early. It's not a thought that's ever occurred to me, but it's really profoundly powerful, and that is that the breath is a tool of love.
It really is.
Is that copyrighted? Can I use that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
I have your permission.
I don't have it. Yeah. From this day forward.
But really, I've never thought of it exactly that way. Put that thought together, and that's a really powerful piece of the puzzle. That it literally is a tool of love. It's what ushers active love into the structure.
Right.
Or what blocks active love from moving in the structure if we hold it. That's a powerful way to think of it. Thank you.
Yep. It's the door. It's that threshold. Oh, yeah. Yes, there could be one side of the coin. There could be disruption, disturbance, dis-ease on one side of the coin of the breath. The other side of the coin is joy, happiness, the love, the I am, the I feel, this I feel loving, and then having that manifest as I walk through the threshold. And to acknowledge that to the other person, or to yourself. Because what's interesting as you're swimming, for me, it's like the more actively I breathe, and what I mean is, as I do my stroke, turn my head to my right and take my breath, and then do the stroke with my right hand. My head goes underwater. I blow the air out, and again repeat. So up again, breathe in, and when I go to breathe in, it's an active breath. It's this activeness of sucking the air into my body, rotating my head down into the water, do the stroke, another stroke, then turn your head back again. And again, it just occurred to me swimming in the fact that it's a real active sucking. That's probably not the most elegant way to put it. It doesn't sound right to me, but it's more of this acceptance of breathing as deeply as much as I can get in that moment. And when I am, Michael, when I am not, you have said it to me over the years so many times, are you breathing? Are you breathing? And you have it in almost all of your lectures. There's a point where you say, are we breathing? And then 9 times out of 10, no,
it's definitely core.
I'm not breathing.
It's definitely core. And, when you get into the Aramaic, when you hear that the creation story, as it, is expressed, one of the creation stories that's expressed in the Western scriptures, if you go back into Genesis, where the Greeks tell us that God sent out his spirit, in Aramaic it doesn't say that. It literally says that the Creator sent out its breath. And you watch people when their minds and bodies are in dysfunction and they're not breathing. They cut the breath off. And it literally is how we cut ourselves off from the source, from the Creator.
As well as any other drug, as you were saying earlier. I mean, you name the drug. What that drug typically does, in my experience, is it takes my lens that I see the world through and does something to it and twists it. Or even, I can remember years ago, the actual, flipping, that everything's upside down. But that's what makes me feel okay. What? Oh my gosh! Did you hear what you just said? You're okay with the lens that you're seeing through, as I remember you have said, looking through this dark lens. It's been, retarded. It's been disrupted, but you feel better. You feel like it's okay, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. It is okay. But there's another way, and that you spoke to this earlier today, and that was the power of changing your mind. That's Paul Ferrini, saying the gift. Before we leave God to come to this experience, he says, "You'll forget about me. That's fine. Don't worry, because there's one thing you can always do, and that's change your mind." That's the other thing that occurs to me too is the simplicity. The mind says, "Oh, well, that's too simple."
Yeah, if there's a problem with it, it's too simple.
Yeah,
and
that's too simple.
Yeah, and my offering would be that we never left the Creator. Until we held our breath.
Yeah,
there was never a separation until we held our breath. Love was always present until we shut it down. And it occurs to me, you've shared with me a few times the startling experience that you had at one of the intensives we had in Oak Island, where you were sitting listening to a class, and all of a sudden a place with pain in your spine started to move and disappeared from your body. And it occurs to me to invite you to go back to that moment and really tap into it. And what was happening with your breath in that moment? Do you recall? I suspect
I don't.
do.
I remember. We were there. It was interesting because it was one of those self-reflections where you're in a room of people, but you're actually looking at yourself, and you're aware of the other people in the room, but there's this internal plumbing that was going on in my lower back that again, I don't remember the breathing part. I do remember it was more of the memory that I have about it is the reconfiguration, or quote unquote, that doesn't have to be reconfiguration. It's the configuration was changed, and ever since then I don't have the same problem. I don't have the same outcome.
Pain's gone.
I have a different outcome.
The warning signal that there was aberrant energy there has now disappeared because the aberrant energy is no longer present there.
Bingo.
Changing.
So there you have it. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there you go with Candace Pert.
Sweet.
and saying, oh my gosh, these things are molecular level that as a manifester, as a creator, I can engage this with my breath and my thoughts.
Mind energy. Mind energy unbecoming flesh. Traumatic, energetic patterns being literally breathed free from the system. That's the core of forgiveness. That's the core of what we're working to get people to really grasp, and the skill to develop.
That's where I can, my further is the still point, quantum still point process is to.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. What occurs to me is a reconfiguration. Spending the 3 days with you, and having now, it's been, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and it's certainly an aspect of restructure of the antenna of my experience. So,
all right.
It really, so
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing the tail end of this whole presentation, just bringing the whole thing back to the breath. Thank you for doing that. And that early thought, was in the first few sentences that really caught my attention. The way that you offered that of the breath, the breath is a tool of love, and it's so absolutely accurate. I'm going to remember that one, sir. Thank you.
Well, now you owe me. You and Jeannie. So
I owe you. I owe you. Okay. I'll pay.
Bye. See you.
I'll pay. I'll send a donation today. All right. Have a blessed one, my friend. Cherish you. Take care. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. Create the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world.